Welcome to Cedar Ridge. My name's Matthew. I'm the lead pastor here. Today is a really sad day. It's a sad morning for us. I think probably most of you are already aware that somebody who's very dear to us, Betsy Henning, died last night, and she was on staff here. So, we're kind of grieving as a staff, as a leadership, as a community. She died about 8 o'clock in the evening yesterday, so this is all a huge shock, totally out of the blue. We had no idea about it. And so we're a community that tend to arrive a little late on Sundays. So we're just going to sing a few songs together to start off with. And I'll be, after that, I'll get up and we'll just share together. So basically our kind of regular service has just been put aside as we process together as a community this incredible loss that we've experienced. And we're going to have an opportunity to share with one another some of our thoughts about Betsy. So we don't really even know how this service is going to go, to be honest. So just, come with us and let's be a community together. Let's be present to this grief. If you're new here, I'm really sorry that you've come on a day like this. I mean, we're so glad you're here. Thank you for coming. This may feel a little awkward and a little strange if you're brand new. Please just bear with us and be patient with us. You're going to see us in some respects as we really are this morning as a church community. So let's just stand together. I'm going to pray, and then the band are going to lead us in a couple of songs, and then, as I said, we'll process this together. Let's pray. Emmanuel. This is my
This is the air I breathe.
Okay, if you'd like to sit down, thank you. Again, if you've just arrived, we've got some really sad news to share. Betsy Henning, who I think is very well known to our community, died last night around 8 p.m. So we're just all kind of reeling from the shock of this. It was unexpected. And we're going to process some of that together this morning. And again, if you are new here, we want to include you in this service, and I'm sure there'll be a certain degree of awkwardness for you in that, but please bear with us. And we're just going to be authentic, we're going to be real. We're going to embrace this grief that we're in right now. And also, we're going to embrace hope and reflect on that. Just because this is so fresh, so new, I just wanted to share a few practical details. Betsy has been off sick this past week. Not untypically, actually, during this time of the year. She's had sort of chronic chest and bronchitis issues for many years, and would often in the winter months get a bout of that and sort of be out of action for a while. She had what seemed like one of those. She may have had flu. I don't think honestly it was confirmed flu, in terms of a diagnosis, but she had a pretty bad chest infection. Seemed to get a little better during the week, and then got suddenly much worse last night. Eric, her husband, actually called me. I used to be a medical doctor, so Betsy and Eric were often, or sometimes, called me for medical advice. He showed me what was going on. I said, I think you really ought to take her to the emergency room. And in his attempt to get her there, it seemed like it was just a few minutes later, she collapsed, and the emergency service came and were unable to resuscitate her. I could actually, when I was talking to Eric, I could hear her talking in the background. This was, even from that point, it was very, very sudden. So I went over to be with Eric and Ian most of last night. Eventually took them to some friends where they've stayed tonight. They're not going to be here this morning, and understandably they just need some space. So lots of practical things need to be sorted out in terms of funeral, memorial service, caring for Ian and Eric, we're still, this is only 14 hours ago or something like that, so we're still working all that out, and we'll put things on our Facebook site and on our website so that everybody can access ways to really help and support the family during this time. So if you could just sort of bear with us today as we put all that together. Just on another sort of practical note, for those of you here who are parents, Betsy served in children's ministry. She actually, there's probably, if you've been part of this church for very long, it would be hard for you not to know Betsy, right? The lady with the purple hair, for one thing. She was, in many ways a larger-than-life character, right? She served most of her time here on staff. She was here, I forget exactly how long, it was a long, long time. Probably 15 years on staff, but part of this community for much longer than that. So she served mainly helping run Sundays. So she was, I think very well known to most people in this room. But for the last year, she's been serving, doing a similar thing in children's ministry. So a lot of the children got to know her. So Brian and I spoke late last night. Brian's the pastor of children and youth here. We spoke late last night, and then we met this morning also to talk through how we're going to handle that with the children. So I just want to communicate to you right now, if you have children in children's ministry, we're not going to make a formal announcement about that at this point to the children, because we feel that that's probably something you as parents would want to talk through with your children. The issue of death and grief and that kind of thing. However, we do know, because Eric, Betsy's husband, is probably one of the most prolific Facebook users I know. Now, I'm not on Facebook, but those of you who are in touch with Eric and Betsy through Facebook will have noticed that he posted pretty much as it was happening, posted it on Facebook. So many people know about it, and including some of the children. So what Brian is doing this morning is he's making statements to the children that if anybody is sad this morning, anybody's grieving this morning, that he's going to spend some personal time with them and just let them process that a little bit. We will send some information out during the week, some thoughts about processing grief with children, and also just explain what we're going to say next week. But just since this is so sudden, so recent, we're not actually going to be making an announcement at Children's Ministry. So again, just sort of bear with us with that process. But we want to encourage you to talk to your children, those that knew Betsy, and just to explain what's happened, and we'll help you with that. We'll help process that a little. If you have any questions about that afterwards, please come and see me, and I'll be more than happy to chat that through. Okay, so what I thought we would do right now, we're going to have a chance to share publicly in a moment, but I'm going to share a couple of scriptures, and then I thought we could just break up into 3s and 4s, just where you're sat, and just share some memories about Betsy, or even how you're doing with this, how you're processing this. Look out for people who you don't know, for people who may be new. Let's just include one another and support one another. Before we go though, I just want to share a couple of scriptures, and I guess sort of give ourselves permission here to feel the whole gamut of emotions that we're going through, and to sort of embrace this reality that we're in. And let me share something with you from Psalm 13, because the Psalms are full of grief and anger and annoyance at God, and life's just not right, life's just not fair. And there's a lot of evidence actually that the ancient Hebrews would use these psalms to kind of vent, and they would say and pray these psalms until some of their anger, some of their fear, some of their anxiety seemed spent, and they could then really kind of focus on what was going on inside. But I want to read you from Psalm 13. And some of us may be feeling like this right now. Some of us may be in this situation with Betsy, or maybe even other situations where we just feel like, God, why are you allowing this to happen? How long, O Lord, will you forget me forever? How long will you hide your face from me? How long must I wrestle with my thoughts and every day have sorrow in my heart? How long will my enemy triumph over me? Look on me and answer, O Lord my God. I kind of sense the psalmist saying, look at me. Do you see what I'm going through right now? There's real emotion in this psalm. Give light to my eyes, or I will sleep in death. My enemy will say, I have overcome him, and my foes will rejoice when I fall. So there's that sense of injustice, that sense of pain. But then the psalm ends in this way. But I trust in your unfailing love. My heart rejoices in your salvation. I will sing to the Lord, for he has been good to me. And I wonder if this morning we can feel that emotion and not deny it and not try and hide it and not try to stuff it down and just be real about it. But can we also fall into the unfailing love of God, that God is love? And maybe it's putting it another way. Maybe we can just allow that unfailing love to find us right now, to find that hurting place in us, that fearful place in us. And maybe we can really pray that for Ian and for Eric as well in this time. So there's that sort of dark side, if you like, that we're wrestling with. When it comes to things like death, suffering, the hurt we experience in this life, I think it's very difficult for us to understand. And I don't pretend to have all the answers or to be able to explain that away. But what I do see in all of this, and maybe we can put that quote from Isaiah up, Sarah, that even though we can't explain it all, that God comes to us in that distress, comes to us in that suffering, comes to us in that sorrow. This is prophetic language that we believe was talking about Jesus. Hundreds of years before Jesus came, it says of Jesus, he was despised and rejected by men, a man of sorrows and familiar with suffering. Like one from whom men hide their faces, he was despised, and we esteemed him not. In other words, God is familiar with sorrow. God is familiar with grief. God's not some remote, unemotional, distant object who doesn't relate to what we're going through. So even though we can't understand it, even if we can't explain it, God is present right here and now, in the middle of all this grief. And in that, is hope, because this is the other side of the mystery and the pain and the darkness of death. That as followers of Jesus, and something we've been talking about a lot, last week and even the week before, as we've been looking at the book of John, is this sense of hope that there's more beyond just the life we're experiencing in the here and now and in the tangible. But there's something bigger. That life and the life that Jesus talked about is bigger. And let me say this, that life eternal that we were talking about, Betsy experienced that. Betsy was full of that. And I believe in that sense that Betsy is experiencing that life even more. Maybe Betsy has been more fully liberated to experience that life. Now that could be empty wishful thinking, let's make ourselves feel better. Or that could be the truth. And we as followers of Jesus lean into that kind of hope. And in Romans, where one of the early church leaders, Paul, wrote a lot about life and death, and the meaning of life, and the meaning of death, and what's this whole reality all about. He said this, who is he that condemns? Christ? It's a question that he's asked numerous times in the context of this passage. He goes on to say, Christ Jesus who died, more than that, who was raised to life, is at the right hand of God and is also interceding for us. Who shall separate us from the love of Christ? Shall trouble, or hardship, or persecution, or famine, or nakedness, or danger, or sword? As it is written, for your sake we face death all day long. We are considered as sheep to be slaughtered. That's another quote from the Psalms that he kind of puts in there to make us pray. No, in all these things we are more than conquerors through him who loved us. For I am convinced that neither death nor life, neither angels nor demons, neither the present nor the future, nor any powers, neither height nor depth nor anything else in all creation will be able to separate us from the love of God that is in Christ Jesus our Lord. That's our hope. That nothing can separate us from God's love. Now we are leaning into that hope, but we're experiencing the pain and loss of this reality that we live in and that we experience. If there's some more time this morning, we may talk a little bit more about life as we've been looking at it and discussing it in John's Gospel. But let's this morning kind of embrace those two things. Let's embrace hope. Let's recognize and embrace the pain that we're experiencing right now. And let's, in the middle of all that, open our hearts to the fact that God is with us. Jesus was a man of sorrows, acquainted with grief. And in that place, God is here to meet with us, to help us, to comfort us. In that place, God is there for Ian. God is there for Eric. And we can be the body of Christ in that place for them, to communicate love, to put our arms around them, to care for them and carry them through this difficult time. So let's be there even this morning. So let's take a moment just to, as I said, 3s, 4s, 2s, whatever seems appropriate. Just gather into little groups and let's just share maybe a memory about Betsy, maybe how we're feeling right now. Let's talk about it for a few moments, then I'll gather us back together again. Okay, so again, on a practical note, we'll be holding a memorial service at some point. Eric, he was trying to start talking all the details with me last night. I said, Eric, just don't worry about it. Just take some time. Most likely there'll be a private viewing and cremation and then a memorial service. We're not sure exactly when that's going to be. I think there's a high chance it will be, I would say it's almost certainly going to be here, but high chance that it will be perhaps after a service in the next couple of weeks on a Sunday. So as soon as we have information about that, we'll post that. So we'll have a kind of a more formal, if that's the right word, or prepared memorial service. But I just wanted to open it up to anybody that would like to share something, maybe a memory about Betsy, or just a reaction to this. We could share that with one another. So here comes Tommy. He's right up there. Keep it under an hour, Tommy.
So I thought that this picture tells it all, because Betsy had a way of doing things with a flair. And so it's Martin Luther King's, holiday weekend. And what that slogan would be saying is, dude, free at last, good God Almighty, free at last. I love Betsy, and I just, I'm so sad this morning, but I told Matthew, I was reflecting all morning long, I feel like she's got a release that is just indefinable. And I'm going to miss her awfully bad, but I just think that's the gospel that we're talking about is the gospel of hope, that she is just a very happy woman this morning. So thank you. Let me share.
Okay. Anybody, if you'd like to share something, you can maybe just raise your hand and stand up. We'll bring the mic to you.
One of my memories of Betsy was a few years back. She did a sermon on Little Miss Sunshine. It's kind of funny to say Little Miss Sunshine on a day like this, but it had such a powerful impact on me. Where she described this one scene in the movie where there's one kid who's having trouble and his little sister goes down and sits by him. And the power of a loving presence on our lives and revealing our faith and strengthening us through struggles. It was so inspiring. It was something that I've been struggling with for the past several years, just to be a loving presence, not knowing the right thing to say, not knowing the right thing to do, not having it all figured out, but just diving into hard times and being available and being true to that. And I think that's a gift that she gave me, and I've seen it in others as she came alongside, and it was just a loving presence to them. Just a follower of Jesus who wanted people to live fully. I just hope that I can continue to struggle to be that loving presence that she exemplified.
Yeah. Thank
you. I'm recalling the way she worships. That for her, it was not a head thing. It was something that grabbed and moved everything inside her. And I'm more expressive of a lot of people in this congregation. She encouraged me in that and saying she was glad to see that because for her, faith was not just something up in the head. It was something in her heart, in her whole body, and she expressed that. You could see that in when she worshiped. And I just hope for this community that we can all get that spirit more deeply in us, where God is touching us in our hearts and through our whole bodies, and that we can express our worship with ourselves like she did.
Yeah. Thank you.
That reminds me of a sermon that she gave one time, and the phrase that hit me the most was, "Be the church." So in the spirit of Betsy, that we can be the church.
One of the things I'm just thinking about so much is how much we have to be grateful to Betsy for, how much she gave to us as a church, and I'm thinking about how much she gave to me personally. Any one of us, even if today is your first day here, all you have to do is walk into those children's rooms and see her beautiful artistry all over the world, because she lit up those rooms personally when she walked into them, and then she lit them up with the legacy that she's left and the beautiful way that she painted it. And so many times we come into church and in the front foyer, there'd be a wonderful artwork that she not only designed, but she involved so many members of the congregation into being involved. And she had a way of, she was one of those wonderful artists who convinced you that you could be an artist too. Instead of just thinking like, oh, an artist up there, little me down here. She would bring that out in people, in the both in terms of the physical art, but also in terms of just her spirit, her faith, the beautiful way that she would pray with you if you were feeling grief. And I feel so sad for her family that, for Eric and Ian. It's hard for me to remind myself that, their grief now, like our grief now, is a direct reflection of the joy that we had every day with her.
When we started coming here about 10 years ago, Betsy was giving communion one day, and she had been giving it, reading it from the paper every Sunday. And one Sunday she got up there and went, no paper, what am I going to do? And she just winged it, which she had been doing it so often, and it was something that was so deep in her soul, understanding communion. She just then just spoke about it from her heart. And that day, communion changed for me, and I understood it, because she understood it better than anyone I knew. Taking Jesus into her body and being his hands and his feet. And that was basically my understanding of Betsy. She was Jesus to me. She loved everyone unconditionally. She let everyone know immediately when you first met her that she loved you. You just felt comfortable with her immediately. She was also, the arty side of her was just so much fun and has so much of an impact on what Cedar Ridge is, and what we look like, what we do. We put papers back up on the walls. I encourage you all to draw something on for Eric and me, because that's what Betsy would have you do. We're going to miss her a lot.
Yeah, I just agree with so much of everybody's already said. It's just like, Betsy was everywhere. She was just absolutely everywhere. And how do you come in here and not see Betsy? It's just like, what do you mean, no Betsy? I still can't wrap my head around that, and I'm sure most of us can't. And it'll be some time to come processing it. And there's just no words to describe her, because all I could think last night was just, she's larger than life. What do you even know, Betsy, walking in here today? And I just want to thank her so much for all of the incredible creative worship services she's given us all over the years, ways that none of us, I'm sure, had ever experienced before or could have imagined, just the astounding creativity that went into the services that she gave to us, that where else but Cedar Ridge do you find that kind of experience? And where else do you find somebody that was as unique and one of a kind as Betsy? And when she did communion, I so appreciated what Heidi shared. There were times when I would just cry when she would do communion, because she just so got what it meant, and to share that with all of us in community. And I just wanted to say thank you, Betsy, and there's no words. We love you.
Well, there's really nothing I'm going to be able to add. Everyone's pretty much said everything I wanted to say. Now, I've known Betsy. I knew Betsy. She's one of the first people I met at Cedar Ridge. But back to our artistic, Betsy was a person who believed in community, and this community, helped build this community. And there's nothing in this building that I can touch that Betsy hasn't touched in some way. And I remember when she did the yarn And she had the yelling going throughout the room and crisscrossing. And she just wanted to get us to understand that we are all one people. We are,
and now I'll never get to hear it again.
Years ago when I started coming to Cedar Ridge, I came right at the time when Brian was just leaving and Matthew was coming. I was invited by Dave Weber. And I came sporadically and started coming more often. And other folks may have a similar sentiment. And one of the reasons why I started coming regularly was because of Betsy. Because I got to meet Betsy, got to know her, and you're such a disarming, authentic personality, loving and caring and outspoken in a way, you know, she said what was on her mind. And so I really enjoyed her presence, enjoyed being around her and being around them. I got to spend, I think it was either 2009 or maybe 2010 Thanksgiving with them, which was fun, which was great. She made an amazing spread for Thanksgiving. And then the next year I spent Christmas with them, and it just was a lot of fun being with them. Very welcoming person, very welcoming family. I remember sitting in the kitchen talking with Betsy about a couple things I think I never shared with anybody, because she's just so open and so easy to talk to, and I felt like I could really, just really talk to her about things. But I miss her, and I know a lot of people here do. It's hard to. It was really hard to even imagine walking in the doors without her being here. And even now, it hasn't really sunk in, you know, that she's not here. But gonna miss her a lot.
We're just going to have 2 more people share. Okay, there'll be more opportunity. We'll have a special service for this. There will be more opportunities to share. We're just going to have 2 more. Dan, you've got the mic. And
Sorry. One day I helped in children's ministry with Betsy in the 1st and 2nd graders, and my son was in the class, and they were talking about pop music, and she said to the kids, what do you listen to? And my son's hand shot up, and I thought, oh boy. 'Cause we don't generally let our kids listen to the radio that much, and we kind of have sort of particular restrictions on music, but one thing we let him listen to and he's always loved is John Prine. So sort of a alt-rock country guy from the 60s and 70s, who's not well known. And I thought, well, we'll see how this goes. So he shot his hand up first, and she called on him, and he said, John Prine. And she goes, did you say John Prine? And he said, yes. And she said, oh, you just made my day. And my son was just beaming. And I was just so thankful for that moment and the presence she had for my kids. And I told them this morning, and they were all very sad. And they all, she was a big presence in their lives, and they all really loved her. I'm eternally grateful for that.
thanks, Dan.
I've only been coming to Cedar Ridge for about a year, and I have found a second career the last few years that some of you may be able to relate to, and that is one of grandmother. And a couple Sundays I've had my grandson here with me, and Betsy would just pounce on him and squeeze his cheeks and give him a big hug. And I brought him to the fall festival that we had here back in October or whenever it was. And he saw the kids with pictures on their faces. So, Nana, I want a black cat on my face. So I took him over, and Betsy was free, and she put the black cat on his face. And he wanted a pink bow on that black cat. And Betsy put that pink bow on that black cat with not batting an eyelash. And I got lots of questions afterwards about why did he have a pink bow on that black cat? And I said, because he wanted it, and Betsy never questioned his request. And so even though I've only been coming a year, I feel her loss as well. I'm grateful for her.
Thank you. So, many Betsy stories. I'm going to just quickly share one. I know there's a story as maybe a comment. You know, Betsy, as I was saying, served in on Sundays, and many of you have sort of remarked on the different creative elements she brought into what we do on Sundays. Betsy would be the first to say also that she brought a load of chaos into it as well. You know about Betsy, right? You know, she was this beautiful, creative, and chaotic at the same time. You know, it was a beautiful thing. But that also, I think, caused her a lot of stress because details and organisation wasn't her, thing she loved most. And I think about Christmases, because Christmas Eve services take a lot of organisation. That was one stressful thing for her, year in, year out. And her role changed this last year, and she was, as I mentioned, in children's ministry. And so she was off-free. She was scot-free on Christmas Eve. And I don't know if you're here on Christmas Eve, but you may remember that she and Ian read together. They read a couple of the scriptures. And she was so emotional about that. That was such a great experience for her. As I look at that, I think, I'm so glad she had that experience. Because it was being on the other end of Christmas Eve. Usually she was up in that sound booth, stressing about all the details and all the practicalities. And she had the best Christmas Eve of her life, she told me. And that experience with Ian was just phenomenal for her. She also wrote me in the card she sent me for Christmas just what an amazing year this had been for her, working with the kids. Because we would talk frequently that if you'd said to Betsy 10 years ago, you're going to be working with children, she'd have just laughed at you. But since she had Ian, and since that transformed her life, I think those of you who have experienced Betsy working in children's ministry would agree. That just seemed to evoke something in her that was so natural, so beautiful, so creative, and fit so well. And so she really thrived. And I think the thing about Betsy for me is that she lived life. She was full of life. She loved Jesus, and she was full of life. That doesn't mean she didn't have her struggles and her difficulties. She certainly did, but she persevered through those and embraced life in a way that I think was inspirational to all of us. And it's that kind of life, I think, that comes from the living Christ present in her. That's the kind of life that, as Tommy opened up with earlier, she's been released to fully. We're running out of time, but we're going to talk more about that kind of thing. We were going to talk about it today, but we're going to talk about it more next week now as we continue on with the John series. But just around this time off, this sharing time, where's Vike? Vike's going to come and play a piece. I think he's going to introduce it. He's just going to play a piece of music kind of in memory of Betsy. So I'm going to hand over to you, Vike. And then I'll get up and we'll have communion together.
I was thinking that, music can sometimes say what words can't, and I wanted to offer something. And I don't know who John Pride is, and I doubt that I listened to the radio stations that Betsy did, because I play classical music, but I know she loved music. And this particular piece, it's about 3 minutes long, and it mingles. One of the things that fascinates me about music is it can combine joy and grief in the same moment, and that's a lot of what we're feeling.